The man who cannot control his emotions is already owned by the world. Read that again. Not by a person, not by a system, not even by fate, but by everything. By every comment, every betrayal, every delay, every glance, every silence. A man without emotional control is not a man, he's a puppet, and the strings are invisible. Most people will never see it, because the war isn't loud. It isn't fought with fists, or guns, or speeches. It's fought in stillness, in the space between reaction and restraint, between what you feel and what you do. And that war, the one nobody claps for, is the most important battle of your life. There's a moment every man reaches, a moment when he looks in the mirror and realizes that the real enemy is not out there. It's not the woman who broke him, not the father who ignored him, not the world that overlooked him. It's the storm inside, the chaos he carries, the part of him that wants to scream when he's disrespected, that needs to be understood, that crumbles when things don't go his way. That's the enemy. And it doesn't wear a uniform, it wears his face. You see, this world doesn't reward the loud. It rewards the calculated, the quiet, the unfazed, the man who feels the fire, but doesn't let it burn him. The man who bleeds internally, but walks like he's untouched. The man who doesn't seek revenge, because he is revenge. He's not ruled by emotion, he rules it. But here's the truth, no one tells you. You will not become that man by accident. You'll have to kill parts of yourself to evolve. The needy boy, the anxious overthinker, the one who argues to prove a point, cries to be held, panics when alone. You bury him, because he is your weakness, dressed as sensitivity. He is the saboteur, wearing your voice. And every time you react to insults, rejection, disrespect, you give him more life. You make him the king, and yourself, the slave. Control is not coldness. It's clarity. It's seeing the chaos inside and refusing to act from it. It's hearing the insult and smiling. It's watching her walk away and not chasing. It's feeling the urge to speak and choosing silence instead, because silence is power. Detachment is not distance, it's precision. Emotion is not weakness, unless it owns you. So what does it look like? To own your emotions, it looks like strategy, like a man who waits, listens, calculates, a man who doesn't flinch when disrespected, who doesn't need to be liked, heard, or praised, because he already knows. He knows who he is, and because of that, nothing touches him, not because he's numb, but because he's disciplined. You want to be feared, be unreadable. You want to be respected, be unshakable. You want to be free. Master the enemy within. The truth is, this isn't about becoming some cold-hearted machine. It's about becoming dangerous to the chaos that once ruled you. Because the world will test you. You will be insulted. You will be betrayed. You will be overlooked, underestimated, mocked. And every time you'll be faced with a choice, react or rise. React, and you're predictable. React, and you're just another puppet in the game. React, and they win, not because they were stronger, but because you were weaker. But rise, and you become the man they can't read. Rise, and you become the one they watch, in silence, wondering what you'll do next, because your silence speaks louder than their noise. This is the beginning of your war. A war fought in discipline, in detachment, in the moments no one sees. And you don't win it once. You win it every day, every time you want to break. And you don't, every time you want to shout. And you stay silent, every time you feel weak. But move with strength. That's how you conquer the enemy, the one within. Because when you own your emotions, you own yourself. And when you own yourself, no one else can. The battlefield is not outside, it's behind your eyes, and in front of your next decision. Welcome to war. Make it silent. Make it strategic. Make it yours. You think you're in control, but you're not. You're just addicted, and you don't even know it. Not to alcohol, not to drugs, not even to sex. You're addicted to feeling. You crave it. The rush, the drama, the chaos, the high of validation, the low of rejection, the adrenaline of an argument, the dopamine hit from a like, a message, a response. You've mistaken movement for meaning, emotion for identity, and now you're a slave to it, chained to every spike of attention, every wave of hope, every flicker of approval, and like any addict, you'll destroy yourself just to feel it again. They told you that being emotional makes you human, that expressing everything makes you honest, that sensitivity is strength, but they lied, because they benefit when you're weak. When you're emotionally unstable, you're easy to sell to, easy to manipulate, easy to predict, and above all, easy to control. They don't need chains anymore. They just need your attention, and they feed it to you. Constantly. Reels, notifications, outrage, praise, scroll, react, repeat, feel, until you forget what silence even sounds like. You see, this isn't just about feelings, it's about impulse. You're being trained by design to respond without thinking. Someone insults you. You snap. She pulls away. You chase. You feel doubt. You drown. Every emotion is treated like an emergency. But here's the truth. Not every fire needs to be put out. Some just need to burn out on their own. Let me tell you something brutal. The world doesn't care how you feel. Not your enemies. Not your ex. Not the system. Not even the people you think love you unconditionally. They care how you move, how you respond, how you act, especially when it's hard. And here's the paradox. The more emotion controls your actions, the less your actions will control your future. You think you need motivation. You don't. You need emotional discipline. You need to become disgusted with your own impulsiveness. Not in a shameful way, but with strategic awareness. You need to realize that the man who cannot delay his reaction will never own his life, because his emotions own him. It's easy to scream. It's easy to cry, to rant, to beg, to explain. It's easy to feel and make others responsible for how you feel. What's hard? Stillness, holding the tension without letting it break you, observing your thoughts without obeying them, feeling everything, and acting on nothing until you choose to. That's power. Not loud, not flashy, just undeniable. Think of a sniper. He doesn't shoot because he feels like it. He waits, watches, breathes, and when the moment is right, he pulls the trigger. That's how you should treat your emotions. Not as commands, but as data. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean it deserves your energy. Doesn't mean it controls you. Most men never learn this. They stay reactive, forever stuck in loops. In arguments they should have ignored. In relationships they should have ended. In jobs they should have walked away from. But they couldn't, because they felt too much. And so they gave their whole lives to emotion. That's not living. That's bleeding. You want real freedom? You must become emotionally numb to noise, and emotionally surgical with what matters. This doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't worship your feelings. It means you take that anger and forge it into silence. Take that heartbreak and channel it into discipline. Take that fear and use it to sharpen your vision. The man who can delay his reaction owns the battlefield. Because while others are busy feeling, he's busy winning. He's the eye in the storm, the stillness in the riot, the wolf that watches, not the dog that barks. Let me leave you with this. If every emotion you feel turns into action, you are not a man. You are a machine being operated by the world. But if you can feel the storm rise inside you and still hold the line, then you've already won. Because the strongest man in the room isn't the one who speaks the loudest. It's the one who doesn't flinch. The most dangerous man in the room is the one you can't read. He could be angry. He could be calm. He could be plotting your downfall or letting you go, but you'll never know. And that's what makes him lethal, because power doesn't come from noise. It comes from silence. And the man who keeps his emotions buried beneath the surface, he doesn't lose control. He gives it to no one. Most men, they wear their heart like a badge. They speak before they think. They emote before they calculate. They walk into a room, and you already know everything. They're insecure. They're desperate to prove something. They want to be liked. They want to be seen. And because of that, they're predictable. And predictability is death. In war, the most feared generals weren't the loud ones. They were the cold ones. The ones who moved armies without raising their voice. Who stood behind a map, staring, in silence, while everyone else panicked. You couldn't tell what they were thinking. You couldn't read their next move. And that made them terrifying. Because when a man is unreadable, he becomes untouchable. He becomes myth. Look around. We live in an age of overexposure. Everyone is explaining, reacting, emoting, defending. Every post is a confession. Every message is a plea. Every word is a tell. But the man who learns to be unreadable, he stops playing by those rules. He becomes the dealer, not the gambler. Think of life like chess. The emotional man, he plays with his heart on the board. Every move reveals desperation. Every pause gives away fear. He sacrifices the king just to save his pride. But the unreadable man, he's quiet, focused, unmoved. You can't predict a man with no visible pattern. You can't destroy what you can't define. Now let's get clear on something. Unreadability is not manipulation. It's not lying. It's not pretending. It's restraint. It's discipline. It's strategy. It's realizing that not everything inside you deserves to be seen. That power is diluted every time you overexpress, so you learn to move differently. Speak less, reveal less, feel deeply, but silently. Because silence isn't emptiness, it's containment. Unreadable men have presence. You feel them before they speak. You notice when they enter, and when they leave, it lingers. Why? Because they're rare. Because in a world full of boys bleeding emotions everywhere, the man who doesn't bleed out loud becomes a symbol of control. Not cold, not robotic, just sovereign. There's a quiet strength in a man who refuses to explain himself, who doesn't flinch when misunderstood, who doesn't rush to clarify, argue, or convince. Why? Because he knows who he is, and that knowing is louder than any explanation. Every word he does speak is intentional, measured, weighted. In his world, language isn't for comfort, it's for control. And here's where it turns brutal. If people can read your emotions, they can use you. They know what makes you insecure, what excites you, what angers you, what makes you move. And once they know that, you're not a threat, you're a puppet. A man who cannot mask his emotions will be mastered by those who can. But when you're unreadable, they start second-guessing. They project. They imagine your intentions because they can't detect them. And in that uncertainty, you gain control. Every silence becomes a move. Every pause becomes pressure. Every calm response becomes a checkmate. Remember, power flows to the man who needs less. And one of the deepest forms of power is needing no reaction. You don't owe the world your expressions. You don't owe them your mood. You don't owe them your emotional temperature. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let them spin stories about what you might be thinking. You. Stay focused. Stay cold. Stay unreadable. And no, this doesn't mean shutting down. It means evolving. It means understanding the difference between emotion and emotional exposure. Between having a heart and handing it to anyone who asks. It means becoming a man with depth, not drama. A man with control, not chaos. A man who walks like a shadow, silent, sharp, unknown, You want to shift your identity. Start here. Stop telling them who you are. Start becoming someone they can never quite figure out. That's not insecurity. That's strategy. That's control. And in this world, control is survival. So if they ever ask, "What's on your mind?" smile, say nothing, because the man who speaks last often wins first. The moment you stop caring about everything is the moment you start controlling something. Let that sink in, because we've been lied to. They told you that real men care deeply, that to be a good man is to be emotionally open, endlessly available, and always concerned. But here's the truth, no one says out loud, caring too much gets you killed, not physically, but mentally, emotionally, strategically. You want to know what breaks most men? It's not failure, it's not betrayal, it's not pressure, it's caring about things that never cared about them. There's a name for the new strength. It's called controlled apathy. It's not numbness. It's not indifference. It's not that you don't feel. It's that you choose not to waste what you feel, because emotion is fuel, and not every fire deserves to burn. Most men bleed energy trying to fix things they can't control. They obsess over how they're seen. They explain themselves to people who've already made up their minds. They chase love where they're not respected. They argue in rooms where their voice holds no value. And all of that bleeding comes from caring too early, too much, too fast. But the masculine mind must be forged differently. You don't care first. You calculate. You observe. You decide if it's worth your energy, and only then do you invest your attention. Controlled apathy is selective warfare. You don't swing at every shadow. You don't run into every fire. You don't feel everything, just what matters. This is the strategy of cold kings, of stoics, of those who understand. Power is not how loud you react. It's how silent you remain. In The Prince, Machiavelli writes that a ruler must not be good, but effective. That to survive, he must learn how not to be good when the situation demands it. That's apathy in its highest form. Not a lack of ethics, but the refusal to let emotions override outcomes. Because influence isn't built on being emotional. It's built on being deliberate, detached, focused. People follow men who don't flinch, who don't panic when misunderstood, who don't explain every silence, who aren't baited by every opinion. That's controlled apathy, and it terrifies the world. They'll call you cold. Let them. They'll say you've changed. You have. They'll say, you don't care like you used to. And they'll be right, because the old version of you gave energy to everything and got nothing back. The old version of you begged to be understood. The new version, he doesn't need to be understood. He just needs to win the inner war. So ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped caring about being liked? If you stopped caring about being invited, noticed, or approved? What if you stopped caring whether they clapped and started building a life so powerful it doesn't matter if they watch? What if the only thing you cared about was mastering your own mind, not being emotional, but emotionally sovereign, not avoiding pain, but refusing to be owned by it, not chasing peace, but walking through fire without screaming? Controlled apathy doesn't make you less human. It makes you more dangerous, more disciplined, more precise. Because when you care less about what drains you, you have more power to give where it matters. You no longer need to fix people. You no longer need to respond to chaos. You no longer need to be understood, because you've started understanding yourself. And from that clarity, you operate in silence. You move like a blade. You feel what needs to be felt and cut off the rest. Understand this. The man who can control what he cares about controls his entire kingdom. His energy becomes rare. His attention becomes sacred. His time becomes war-tested. And his presence becomes feared. Not because he's cruel, but because he doesn't waste himself anymore. He doesn't chase. He doesn't beg. He doesn't bleed for things that can't hold him. He simply watches, waits, chooses, and that's the death of the old you. The man who once begged for answers, now walks away with silence. The man who once clung to being loved, now builds a fortress no one can shake. The man who once cared about everything, now controls everything, because he finally learned how to let go. So if they ask, why don't you care like you used to? Tell them this, because I finally started caring about the right things. And that changed everything. There's a kind of strength they'll never see, because it doesn't shout, it doesn't swing, it doesn't flinch. It just stands there, unshaken, unreachable, still. And that stillness, that silence in the middle of the storm, is more terrifying than rage. The world will test you. People will insult you, betray you, mock your quiet. They want to see you twitch. They want to see if they can pull you into their chaos, because if they can trigger you, they can control you. But the man who cannot be provoked cannot be owned. This is the law of stillness. Stillness is not softness. Stillness is not surrender. Stillness is a strategy, a sharpened blade tucked into silence. It's the monk sitting while the temple burns. It's the samurai who waits one breath longer before striking. It's the war general who watches chaos and doesn't blink. Because here's the truth. If they can move you, they can use you. But when you learn to stay still, you become untouchable. Stillness is more than posture. It's mental sovereignty. It's the ability to observe without reacting, to feel everything and respond to nothing until it's time. Stillness is when your heartbeat doesn't rise when disrespected. Stillness is when you don't chase closure, don't fight to be seen, don't need to explain yourself to chaos, because you already know who you are. And that knowing makes you immune. Look closely at nature. The lion doesn't roar before it strikes. It watches, it waits, still, silent, certain, because in the wild, noise is weakness. Movement is exposure. Reaction is death. Men are no different. We've been conditioned to think strength is loud, that a real man always responds, raises his voice, takes the bait. But the strongest man in the room is the one who can withstand insult without bleeding, who can look a threat in the eye and simply not move. Stillness is resistance. Stillness is control. Stillness is a form of warfare. You don't let your face crack when you're hurt. You don't let your hands shake when you're doubted. You don't let your energy be dictated by fools and noise. That's not repression. That's refinement. Understand, most people are reacting constantly, like leaves in the wind, moved by every opinion, every glance, every minor storm. But the man of stillness becomes the center of gravity. People orbit around him, because stillness creates tension, and tension creates power. Start with your breath. Your breath is your anchor. When you feel heat rising in your chest, pause, breathe once. Then again, don't speak, don't move, just observe. Because most mistakes are made in the first 5 seconds of emotion, and most victories are won by those who wait them out. Stillness gives you space to see clearly. When you're still, you start to notice who's trying to bait you, who's projecting, who's testing your armor just to find the cracks. And when you don't react, they panic. Because stillness exposes their weakness. People can fight rage. They can argue with noise, but silence, stillness, they don't know what to do with that. A still man is hard to read, and what's hard to read becomes hard to beat. That's what makes you dangerous. You don't blink at disrespect. You don't chase answers. You don't act from emotion. You command from presence. Stillness doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've built a throne inside, and you refuse to be pulled off it by someone else's storm. This is spiritual warfare, because in a world addicted to reaction, stillness is rebellion. You're no longer chasing dopamine, no longer seeking validation, no longer leaking energy, trying to be understood. You've gone inward. You've found your own center, and that center cannot be shaken by anything outside of you. But here's the truth. Stillness isn't given, it's earned. Through restraint, through solitude, through watching your own mind until it obeys you. And one day someone will try to provoke you, like they always do, and you'll feel nothing. No spike, no urge, no need, just stillness. And in that moment, you'll know you've won the war. Because stillness doesn't just protect you, it elevates you. It gives you time. It gives you control. It gives you a vantage point no reactive man can reach. You stop being a player and become the one who sees the whole board. So the next time they insult you, say less. The next time they abandon you, don't chase. The next time they doubt you, don't explain. Just stand there, quiet, present, untouched. Because the storm only wins if it shakes your center. And once you master stillness, you become the storm. A man who can't control his emotions is a man who's already lost. Not in battle, not in business, but in himself. Because when your emotions own you, you're not a warrior. You're a puppet, pulled by strings you don't even see. We've been lied to, told that feeling deeply makes us human, that vulnerability is strength, that expressing pain is bravery. But here's what the battlefield teaches you. Emotion is a luxury, and most men can't afford it. Not in war, not in heartbreak, not in betrayal. You bleed too long, you die. Let's be clear, this isn't about becoming numb, it's about becoming selective. It's not about never feeling, it's about never feeding what weakens you. Because the world doesn't care how hurt you are. It cares how dangerous you are, despite it. In survival, the most emotional man dies first. He panics, he chases, he hesitates, he acts out of need. Instead of calculation, pain makes him sloppy, fear makes him loud, love makes him blind, and the cold world swallows him whole. But the man who feels pain and stays silent, who sees betrayal and doesn't flinch, who's broken but still moves like nothing happened, that man becomes a ghost in the system, a shadow no one can predict, a threat no one can read. That's power, that's discipline, that's survival. Think about it, the soldier who watches his brothers fall but keeps his finger steady on the trigger. No tears, no screams, just target, breathe, execute. That's not heartless. That's how you win the war. The same applies in life. She leaves. Your friends turn on you. You get humiliated. Your plans fall apart. Feel it, sure, but feed it. Never. You don't drown in pain. You convert it. Use heartbreak as fuel. Use betrayal as blueprint. Use failure as cold data. Because emotions are either your downfall or your weapon. Most men beg for comfort when they're hurting. But warriors, they don't ask for warmth. They become fire. They take the ache in their chest and turn it into stillness in their face. They take the chaos in their mind and forge it into precision in their decisions. This is emotional discipline. Not expressing everything. Not reacting to everything. Not needing to be understood. You learn to hold your tongue while your heart screams. You learn to sit with pain without needing to announce it. And you realize you are not your emotions. You are what you choose to do with them. Men who survive, hell, are not the loudest. They are the ones who move. With detachment, eyes cold, mind clear, purpose untouched. Because they've trained themselves. Not everything deserves a reaction. Not every feeling needs a voice. Not every trigger deserves your fire. You don't flinch when insulted. You don't beg when left behind. You don't explain yourself to people who've already decided to misunderstand you. Why? Because you've already won the only war that matters, the one inside your own chest. Emotional discipline isn't glamorous. It doesn't look good on social media. It won't get applause. It's lonely. It's cold. It's quiet. But it makes you unbreakable. Because once you stop needing to be liked, once you stop reacting just to feel seen, once you stop negotiating with pain, you become something most men will never be, a weapon with a conscience. Understand this: the man who walks away from the wreckage without needing to scream, without needing revenge, without needing recognition, is the most dangerous man of all. Because his strength isn't in what he shows, it's in what he chooses to withhold. So the next time life cuts deep, don't announce it, don't panic, don't post it, just go silent, go still, go inward, and let that pain carve you into someone they'll never forget. Because emotional discipline is not just power, it's not just masculinity, it's survival. Silence can humiliate a man louder than words ever will. Say nothing, and watch him talk himself into weakness. Stay still, and watch the chaos reveal who's truly in control. Most people speak to prove something. The wise man stays silent, to observe everything. Because silence is not absence. It's strategy, it's pressure, it's a weapon, and most are too loud to ever understand it. A wolf doesn't bark when it's hunting. It waits, it listens. It moves only when it must. The most dangerous men in the room aren't the ones shouting. They're the ones you can't read. No expression, no emotion, no wasted breath. Just presence, cold and calculated. Silence is not weakness. It's what makes people weak around you. It's not passivity, it's precision. Because when you withhold your voice, you force others to fill the void with their own noise. And the more they speak, the more they expose themselves. In interrogations, silence isn't just a tactic, it's a weaponized pause. Interrogators will sit across from a suspect and say nothing, just stare, calm, still, unmoving. The silence grows heavy, unbearable, and the guilty start to twitch. They need to break it. They confess. Not from pain, but from the unbearable pressure of their own mind, collapsing in the silence. That's power without raising your voice. That's dominance without saying a word. Now apply it to life. In arguments, don't fight fire with fire. Let the other person burn themselves trying to ignite you. When someone disrespects you, pause. Let the silence sting deeper than any comeback. Because the man who doesn't respond terrifies. People, they don't know what you're thinking, what you'll do, or when you'll do it, and in that space, you own them. Even in business. The smartest negotiators know. He who speaks first loses. They make their offer, then shut up and wait. Because silence forces the other party to reveal their desperation, to second-guess their own position, to give away power just to fill the tension. That's the game. Control the silence, control the room. Leadership works the same way. The most respected men aren't always the most vocal. They're the ones who speak only when necessary, and when they do, people lean in, because their silence built weight behind their voice. When you speak less, your words hit harder. In relationships, it's the same. Sometimes your silence says, I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to explain myself again. I'm not going to lower my value to keep you comfortable. Let them wonder. Let them feel the space you used to fill. Let your absence echo louder than any desperate message ever could. A man who knows the power of withdrawal will never be manipulated. Silence makes you unpredictable. People can defend against loud men. They know what's coming, but they fear the one who reveals nothing, the one who listens more than he speaks, who observes more than he reacts, because that man sees everything and shows nothing. The world is addicted to noise, to constant reaction, to impulsive replies and emotional outbursts. So when you go silent, you break the pattern, you create a void, and in that void, you gain leverage. Most men talk to prove they're strong, but real strength is proven by what you don't say. Can you take an insult and not respond? Can you lose and not explain? Can you feel anger and not react? If so, You're not just in control. You're untouchable. Understand, this silence isn't emptiness. It's energy being stored. It's power being sharpened. Every pause, every withheld word, every look you don't give, it all becomes part of your presence. A presence that speaks volumes, without making a sound. So the next time they try to provoke you, say nothing. When the room fills with drama, stay still. When everyone rushes to speak, wait. Because the man who uses silence like a weapon never needs to draw his sword. Let them talk. Let them explain. Let them expose you. You just sit in silence and study the battlefield. Because in the game of power, the loudest man is rarely the strongest. But the quiet one, he's the one they never see coming. There comes a night in every man's life when he must bury the boy. Not with tears, not with nostalgia, but with fire, cold, controlled, final. A death without a funeral, a transformation without applause, a goodbye whispered only to yourself, in the silence of your own becoming. This is the ritual of emotional death. And if you want to rise, you must first disappear. You were raised to feel, to react, to be liked, to be understood. They trained you to believe your worth was external, that your emotions were sacred, that your pain deserved comfort, your anger, validation, your sadness, attention. But there's a moment in every man's life when he sees through it, the illusion, the trap, and he realizes he must burn the parts of him that beg to be seen. You don't become strong by being soothed. You become strong by letting the soft parts of you die. It's not about becoming numb. It's about becoming untouchable. Imagine this. A warrior walks into the woods at dawn. No weapons, no words, just silence, and a single task to bury who he was. He kneels before the earth, hands trembling. He digs a shallow grave with his bare hands, not for a body, but for every piece of him that once cried to be saved. The people pleaser, the overthinker, the emotionally needy boy who broke at rejection, who needed validation, who chased closure, who softened himself just to be accepted. He buries them all. No cross, no marker, just dirt and detachment. This is not sadness. This is evolution. You don't mourn the weak self. You eliminate it, like a monk shaving his head before isolation, like a soldier burning letters before war. You let the old skin fall, so something colder, cleaner, more dangerous can emerge. Some will call this toxic. Some will call it heartless. They won't understand, because they never had to survive. They never had to walk through betrayal with no one to call. They never had to keep breathing after the world stopped caring. But you did. And that version of you, the one that kept breaking, is no longer welcome here. There is no room in the mind of a king for the fears of a child. No space in the strategy of a warrior for the cries of the untrained. You are not here to feel safe. You are here to become sovereign. Emotional death is not the end of feeling. It's the end of emotional slavery. It's when you stop needing to be understood. Stop chasing closure. Stop explaining your pain to people who weaponize it. It's when you sit in the storm and smile at the lightning, because you've buried the self that feared the thunder. This isn't suppression. This is ascension. You still feel. You still hurt. You still bleed. But you don't react. Because a man who has buried his emotional dependence is now free. Free from external control. Free from performative pain. Free from the need to be rescued. And when the world tries to pull you back with guilt, with shame, with sweet lies of comfort, you remember the grave, the dirt beneath your fingers, the weight you left behind, and you walk forward, stripped, still, ready. Let them say you changed. You did. Let them say you're colder now. You are, because the fire that once burned for their approval now forges iron. So shave your head, delete the messages, light the letters, leave the chat, cut the rope, whatever it takes. Whatever reminds you of the version of you that needed to be chosen, heard, or saved, bury it, alone, at night, without witnesses, because your rebirth is nobody's business but yours. This is not for everyone. Most men will never do it. They'll live and die as half-formed boys in grown bodies, driven by wounds they never faced. But you're building something colder, sharper, ruthless in discipline, calm in chaos, unshakable, and to become that, the boy must die. The boy wants to be held. The man learns to stand alone, and in the stillness of that death, a new name rises, not softer, not louder, but sovereign. Most men think silence is the end of the story, the calm after the storm, the peace that comes once the noise is gone. But they're wrong. Silence is the beginning of war. It's not peace. It's preparation. The sharpening of the blade before it cuts. The inhale before the kill. You weren't meant to stay silent forever. You were meant to become something through it. See, once you've buried the weak parts of yourself, once you've gone numb to the need for validation, once you've killed the desperate boy inside you who begged to be seen, now you can think. Now you can calculate. This is the shift from silence to strategy, from emotional chaos to cold execution. When you were reactive, your enemies could control you. A simple insult, a rejection, a delay, that was enough to pull you off center, to make you respond like a child, to turn your power into performance. But now, there's space between stimulus and response, a silence, and in that silence you decide. You don't respond emotionally anymore. You respond tactically. You don't just feel anger. You ask, what can I use this for? You don't just feel hurt. You ask, where is this revealing weakness? You don't just feel desire. You ask, is this worth the cost? That is when you become dangerous. The average man lives his life like a flame in the wind, flickering with every gust, every opinion, every betrayal. But the man of strategy is like stone. He does not move. He watches the wind, studies its pattern, and then builds a wall. That's the game. Let others be emotional. Let them talk too much, post too much, reveal too much. You build in silence. You move in shadows. You study people like a chessboard until you don't just play the game, you own it. Here's what they don't tell you. Emotional silence isn't about being numb. It's about redirecting energy. What you don't say becomes a weapon. What you don't chase becomes a magnet. Every emotion you refuse to act on becomes power in reserve. Every silence you hold creates mystery, control, gravity. This is the law of masculine energy. If you're not reacting, you're directing. If you're not chasing, you're creating pull. And eventually, people stop asking why you're quiet. They start watching what you're building. You'll notice it in every field of dominance. In business, the most powerful leaders speak the least and listen the most. In war, the greatest tacticians delay their strikes until the enemy exhausts themselves. In love, the man who doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't cling, becomes the one they fear losing. Why? Because emotional silence amplifies your value. It tells the world, this man doesn't need you to understand him. He already understands himself. But here's the paradox. You didn't do this to become liked. You did this to become lethal. And now, you're no longer playing the game. Emotionally, you're playing it strategically. Your silence is no longer passive. It's not avoidance. It's aim. Every relationship you keep serves a purpose. Every word you speak is placed with precision. Every move you make is tied to a mission. This is what it means to graduate from survival to strategy. The real goal was never to stay silent forever. It was to master yourself, so that when you do act, it's calculated, intentional, final. You didn't kill your emotions to be empty. You killed them to be free. Free to think clearly. Free to cut cleanly. free to walk away from anything or anyone that threatens your mission. This is your rebirth. You're not just a man now. You're a strategist, a builder, a storm in disguise, and the world will learn that your silence was not the end. It was the sound of a weapon being forged. They won't see you coming, because you don't announce yourself anymore. You don't explain. You don't beg to be understood. You watch, you build, you move, like a shadow in broad daylight, like silence after thunder. You are no longer part of the noise. You've become the signal. This is what they never taught you. Real power doesn't shout. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't need permission to exist. It simply is. You've walked through fire, fought your inner battles in silence, buried the impulsive boy, killed the version of yourself that needed to be liked, chosen, saved, and now, you wear your silence like armor. You walk like a man who's already won, because you've conquered the only battlefield that truly matters, your own mind. They don't understand it. They call it cold. They call it arrogant. They call it detached. But you know what it really is. It's sovereignty. You are the quiet king, not the loud warrior, not the wounded boy, not the man who posts every thought or reacts to every comment. You are the one who watches and waits, who speaks when it serves a purpose, who moves when it shifts empires. You've become rare, and the rarest man in any room rules it, not through force, but through gravity, not through fear, but through unreadability. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know what you're building. They don't know what you're capable of. That's the power. That's the throne. You don't need to be the center of attention anymore, because you're the center of control. You hold your cards like secrets. You let others speak first, reveal themselves, and while they perform, you calculate. While they brag, you plan. While they chase approval, you build empires in silence. This is not the life of the average man. This is the life of the dangerous man, the emotionally sovereign man, the one who chooses when and if to feel, not because he's numb, but because he's selective. There is no chaos in him anymore, only precision, only intention, and in a world drowning in noise that makes him godlike, the quiet king doesn't argue. He leaves. He doesn't compete. He creates. He doesn't chase. He draws power through absence, then chooses if he will engage. He doesn't seek to be understood, because mystery is his power, and detachment is his crown. People will wonder what changed, why you stopped explaining yourself, why you don't react like you used to, why your presence feels heavier, colder, sharper. It's because you're not a boy anymore. You're not ruled by your emotions. You're not addicted to being seen. You're not trying to be everything for everyone. You are complete in your solitude, peaceful in your silence, and calculated in your moves. This is the final form. Not a louder version of yourself, but a quieter, deeper, more dangerous one. Because real power is invisible until it strikes. And by the time they feel it, it's already too late. So sit on your throne, alone, if you must, silently, but never passively. You don't need followers. You don't need applause, because kings don't move for attention. They move to change the structure of the board. And right now, in this very moment, you are no longer part of the game. You are the game.